At my father's funeral in a quiet Virginia church, I thought I knew every chapter of his life. While mourners whispered condolences, I slipped into the hallway for a breath. That's when I overheard two relatives talking, and their words revealed a secret about my father that shattered everything I believed. The scent of lilies and polished wood filled the air of St. Mary's Chapel, the same little church in rural Virginia where my father had once taught Sunday school. Morning light slanted through the stained glass windows, scattering jewel-toned colors across the casket at the front. People murmured softly, black coats brushing against one another as they took their seats. I sat in the second pew, hands clenched around the folded program, trying to keep my breathing steady. Losing Dad had been sudden, a heart attack on a rainy Thursday night, and I still felt as if my body hadn't caught up to the news. For 41 years he'd been my compass, a devoted husband to Mom, a steady father to me. Nothing about his life, at least as I knew it, had been secretive or dramatic. Beside me, Mom dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, her face pale under her black hat. My older brother, Mark, stood near the aisle greeting a stream of people who'd driven in from neighboring counties, former co-workers from the bank, high school friends, cousins we hadn't seen in years. Everyone seemed to know a slightly different version of my father, yet all their memories painted the same portrait: generous, trustworthy, faithful. The pastor began the service with a prayer. I tried to listen, but my mind drifted to childhood images. Dad teaching me to ride my bike, Dad quizzing me on math facts at the kitchen table, Dad telling corny jokes in the car. Each memory pressed harder against the ache in my chest. When the choir started a hymn, the close air of the chapel suddenly felt too heavy. I whispered to Mom that I needed some fresh air and slipped quietly down the side aisle. The hallway outside was empty except for a row of coats hanging from hooks. Through the cracked window, I could see the cemetery already prepared with folding chairs and a green canopy. I leaned against the cool plaster wall, eyes closed, drawing slow breaths. From just around the corner came two voices, female, low but urgent. At first I thought nothing of it until I heard my father's name. He never told her, did he? One voice whispered, "Not a word," the other replied. "Imagine finding out like this." Poor thing. My heartbeat quickened. I inched closer, shoes silent on the carpet runner. "She's about to learn the truth," the first voice continued. "And at her own father's funeral." A chill ran through me. Who were they talking about? What truth? I pressed my back to the wall, holding my breath so I wouldn't give myself away. "Do you think she'll confront the family?" the second woman asked. "Or keep pretending?" I didn't hear the rest. My ears roared with a rising panic. The image of my father, the man who had always been my rock, wavered in my mind like a reflection on water. Whatever they were discussing wasn't a small misunderstanding. It was something big enough to be whispered about in corners at his funeral. And in that instant, standing in the dim hallway with sunlight glinting off the stained glass behind me, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew about my father and about myself suddenly felt uncertain. I stayed frozen in the hallway, the muted hymn from inside the chapel fading as the two women's voices became clearer. My fingers clutched the edge of the coat rack for balance. "It wasn't just an affair," the first woman murmured. "It was a whole other family. Up in Roanoke." My heart thudded so loud I worried they'd hear it. Another family? In Roanoke? My father had driven up there often for client meetings, but I'd never thought much of it. He worked for a regional bank. Travel was normal. "They've kept it quiet all these years," the second whispered. "Imagine what she's going to feel when she meets them." A door creaked, and footsteps retreated down another corridor. I peeked around the corner, but the two women had vanished into the maze of hallways. Their words hung in the stale air like a thundercloud about to burst. My stomach churned. Could it be true? Dad, the man who taught me honesty above all, secretly had another family? I stumbled outside to the small churchyard, the cool March wind cutting against my face. Guests mingled near the hearse, their voices carrying over the crunch of gravel. I spotted my brother Mark lighting a cigarette by the fence. I marched toward him, my shoes sinking into the damp grass. "Mark," I hissed. "Did you know Dad had another family?" His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I just overheard 2 women inside. They said Dad had an entire other family in Roanoke." He stared at me, stunned, then flicked his cigarette into the mud. "Look, we can't do this here. Mom's already barely holding it together. So you do know something," I accused, my voice trembling. Mark glanced around, then lowered his tone. "I don't know details, When I was 16, I found letters in Dad's desk addressed to a Claire. He said she was an old friend he helped financially. Mom knew too. She told me never to bring it up again." My knees felt weak. The letters, the trips, the whispered phone calls at night, memories I'd brushed aside as normal now glimmered with a sinister logic. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because we didn't have proof," Mark said, eyes darting to the chapel door. "And we didn't want to destroy the family." The pastor's voice called everyone outside for the graveside service. Mark stubbed his shoe in the dirt, then headed toward the crowd. I followed in a daze, my breath shallow. The burial passed in a blur. I heard words like integrity and devotion and pillar of the community, but they rang hollow. My eyes stayed fixed on the casket, lowering into the earth, each inch deepening the pit in my stomach. After the service, guests drifted toward the fellowship hall for a reception. I stayed back, watching as a woman I didn't recognize approached Mom. She was tall, mid-40s, with auburn hair and a solemn expression. 2 teenage boys hovered behind her, their eyes downcast. Mom's face went white. I walked over just as the woman extended her hand. "Mrs. Hart?" she said softly. "I'm Claire." The name hit me like a blow. Claire. The letters. The whispered conversation. Mom's lips parted, but no words came out. The teenagers shifted awkwardly. Claire looked at me then, her eyes brimming with something between sorrow and defiance. "You must be Emma," she said. I nodded stiffly, unable to speak. "I'm sorry to meet you this way," she continued. "But your father wanted us to be here today." "Us?" I croaked. "My sons," she said, gesturing to the boys. "Evan and Luke." My vision tunneled. "You're saying—" "They're his sons too," she finished quietly. Mom let out a faint sob and turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. "I didn't come to cause trouble," Claire said. "Your father supported us, but he never wanted to hurt you. He thought after he passed, the truth should come out. He left letters for each of you." I shook my head. "No, he would have told me." He wouldn't." Claire reached into her purse and handed me an envelope with my name written in Dad's handwriting. My fingers trembled as I took it. "I'll give you space," she murmured, guiding her sons toward the parking lot. I stared at the envelope, the paper warm from her hand. Mark appeared beside me, his face pale. "I guess it's true," he whispered. I ripped the envelope open. Inside was a single-page letter. "My dearest Emma, I'm sorry you're learning this after I'm gone. I loved your mother, you and Mark more than anything. But years ago, I made mistakes and tried to do the right thing by everyone. Claire and the boys are part of me too. Please don't hate them. Take care of your mother." Dad, the words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Everything, the funeral, the whispers, my entire childhood, rearranged itself into a new, painful picture. A voice behind me cleared its throat. It was the family lawyer, Mr. Davenport, holding a folder. "Emma," he said gently. "Your father left instructions for a private reading of his updated will after the reception. You and your mother and brother should attend." I clutched the letter, my heart hammering. "Does it mention them?" I asked, nodding toward the direction Claire had gone. Mr. Davenport's expression didn't change. "I think it's best you hear it in his own words." As he walked back toward the fellowship hall, I stood rooted to the spot, the March wind whipping around me. I had come to my father's funeral expecting to mourn. Instead, I was about to confront the second life he had hidden from me, and maybe, just maybe, discover even more than I was prepared to handle. The reception in the fellowship hall felt like a stage play in slow motion. Paper plates clinked, Coffee poured. Muted condolences floated past me, but my mind stayed locked on the letter folded in my purse. At the far end of the room, Mom sat stiffly at a table, staring at nothing. Mark hovered nearby, his hand on her shoulder. I took a deep breath and joined them. "We have to talk," I said quietly. Mom blinked as if waking from a trance. "Not here," she murmured. "Then when?" "The lawyer's about to read the will. I just met Dad's other family," her eyes filled with tears. "Emma, please, did you know?" I asked, my voice rising despite myself. Heads turned. Mark shot me a warning look. "Keep it down," he hissed. I swallowed hard, lowering my tone. "Did you know he had a whole other life?" Mom's lips trembled. "I knew about Claire. I didn't know about the boys until a few years ago. Your father promised he'd explain everything someday." "That someday never came," I said bitterly. Before she could reply, Mr. Davenport entered and beckoned us to a small conference room. The three of us filed in, the door closing behind us with a soft click. On the table lay a stack of envelopes and a typed document. Mr. Davenport adjusted his glasses. "Your father updated his estate plan 2 months before his passing," he said. "He wanted me to share his intentions in private." He began reading. Dad's assets were divided between Mom, Mark, me, and yes, Claire's sons. Dad had set up college funds for them, left them a portion of his savings, and even arranged for a trust to support all of us together. My throat tightened. "So we're siblings," I whispered. "In the eyes of the law, yes," Mr. Davenport replied. "Your father asked that you reach out to them after the funeral. He hoped you'd see each other as family." Mom covered her face with her hands. Mark exhaled sharply, pacing. "This is insane," he muttered. "He lied to all of us." I stared at the paper. Anger, sadness, confusion, everything tangled into a knot. "He built 2 lives," I said softly. "And now we're left to pick up the pieces." Mr. Davenport's voice gentled. "He also left letters for each of you explaining his choices. You'll find them inside your envelopes." He slid mine across the table. My fingers hovered over it but didn't open it. I wasn't ready yet. Mom reached for my hand. "Emma," she whispered, "whatever he did, he loved you. That never changed." I looked at her, at Mark, at the closed envelope. My father's secrets had detonated in the middle of his own funeral, scattering our sense of family like shrapnel. And yet, as the lawyer's words faded, a strange clarity began to rise. Dad had been flawed, yes, but the choice of what happened next, whether to heal or let the damage harden, was now mine. I left the conference room with the envelope clutched in my hand, the smell of lilies and coffee drifting through the hall. Outside, the cemetery was quiet again. The mourners had gone, leaving only a few cars under the gray sky. I sat on a low stone wall and finally opened the letter. Dad's handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. "Emma, I failed at honesty. I built 2 lives out of fear and weakness, not out of a lack of love. You were always my heart. Please don't let my mistakes poison your future. You're stronger than I was. Take care of them, but take care of yourself first." I read it twice, then folded it back. The ache was still there, but the fury had drained into something else, something like understanding. He had been cowardly but not malicious. The damage was real, but so was the chance to shape what came after. A soft voice called my name. It was Claire, the other woman, standing a few feet away with 2 teenage boys at her side. They looked nervous, shifting from foot to foot. "I'm sorry for intruding," she said quietly. "They wanted to say hello. He spoke about you all the time." For a moment I couldn't move. Then I stood, walked over, and looked into the boys' faces. They had Dad's eyes. My stomach twisted. "Hi," I managed. "I'm Emma." One of them gave a shy smile. "We're your brothers, I guess." The word brothers caught in my chest, but instead of pulling away, I took a slow breath and said, "Yeah, I guess you are." Behind me, Mom and Mark were watching. Mom's face was pale, but she nodded slightly, as if giving me permission to do what she couldn't yet bring herself to. Mark looked stunned but said nothing. I didn't hug the boys. I didn't make promises, but I also didn't turn my back. I reached out, shook their hands, and said, "Let's figure this out, one step at a time." Later that night at home, I lit a single candle by the window. The letter lay open on my desk. My father's choices had hurt all of us, but they didn't have to define what we became. I thought of the trust fund, the divided assets, the awkward meal that would eventually happen between all of us. It wouldn't be easy, but it didn't have to be war, I whispered to the empty room. I won't repeat your mistakes. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to my mom, to Mark, to Claire, proposing a meeting after the dust settled. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It was simply the first move towards something different, something honest. In that moment, with grief still raw and anger still smoldering, I felt a quiet power. My father's secret had shattered the family I thought I had, but it had also given me the chance to build one on truth. And this time, I would be the one setting the tone.